Campus to Canton. Campus to Canton on the Better Sports Network.
It's week 0 in college football. This is the Tailgate, your pregame show, taking you right up until 12 Eastern. That's usually when the game starts. Chris Moxley, J.J. Parker, Nicholas Ian Allen, Mr. CFB winning edge is in the house. Chris, this is year 3 that we're doing this, and this year we get the production value of Better Sports Network teaming up with Campus to Canton. Are you ready to go this season?
Oh man, I'm so excited. It takes a lot to produce a show at the same time. Now we got Will Shooty in the back. We're ready to roll.
We're ready to roll. Will Shooty is keeping us in line. Nicholas Ian Allen, Mr. CFB winning edge, producing all of the depth charts, statistical projections, projected spreads. Nick, you have to be excited about week 0. I feel like you're the type of guy that does all of that data and you're waiting for the season to start. Well, it starts today.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's weird because for me, in season, believe it or not, things slow down just a little bit. So it's going to be fun to get to see how things look as far as the projections go, what we're getting right, what we're getting wrong, where we're going to be able to learn and improve. But absolutely have been waiting a long time and can't wait to kick it off today.
JJ, our intern at campus2Canton.com. You're live. You're on screen. You're going to be after this week, JJ. You're going to be running the show, so take notes, okay?
All right.
All right. We're going to be covering everything for you this week. Now, of course, week 0 is a little bit of a shorter slate, but generally speaking, we're going to be covering the fantasy angle. We're going to be covering the betting angle. We're going to be covering spreads and betting. Will, let's go ahead and start with the fantasy rankings that we have for week 0 at campus2Canton.com. Let's start with the quarterback position. Let's bring that graphic up onto the screen. Of course, as I'm waiting for that to come up, let's see who we got in the chat. We got Matt Deutsch in the chat. We got Jim. Hello, Jim. Welcome to the stream here. There we go. Caleb Williams, of course, USC, Curtis Rourke, Chevin Cordero, the Hawaii to San Diego State University transfer, and Chris Moxley. For some reason, you like this made-up name, Diego Pava at what? New Mexico State. Talk to me a little bit about your New Mexico State. Talk to me a little bit about Diego.
Yeah, he's a fun player. Was a transfer in last year for what are they? I don't even know what their mascot is. Anyway, he was a transfer in for New Mexico State. They went bowling under Jerry Kill for the season, so I'm a big fan of Pavia. Really good rusher. Aggies, of course they are. Really good rusher. Had over like 65 yards per game. Questionable as a passer, but I think he's going to take a jump this year. So I'm really excited for this New Mexico State team this week, especially getting UMass. They played him last year, and Pavia wasn't really doing anything, but he's a pretty fun player.
Nicholas Ian Allen, I think that we have high expectations for Curtis Rourke. He may even be a potential NFL draft player, but what are your expectations for this Ohio offense, for Rourke specifically? I mean, they've got a lot of firepower there in the MAC.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that as far as the sort of like trio of top skill positions, Ohio has one of the best, certainly in the MAC, maybe in the group of 5, and Rourke and Sibingura, the running back, and then wide receiver Sam Wiggles, and they've got some depth at wide receiver as well. Today's going to be a pretty tough test. San Diego State traditionally is very solid on defense, but they lost a bit this year, lost a couple of transfers, lost a couple of guys to professional careers. They're starting a true freshman in the secondary. So I think that there's a real opportunity for Ohio to start strong, and that experienced core group of offensive players led by Rourke, who's back and fully healthy as expected, have an opportunity for a decent day, better than maybe most would expect against San Diego State.
JJ, let me throw it to you here. Is there any particular quarterback that you're looking forward to watching today who may, put up an explosive performance here in week 0?
Looking forward to, obviously, Caleb Williams, just because he's good at everything, I think. But, yeah, I think Caleb Williams is the most excited to watch. And I think that San Jose State versus USC should be a good game. And lots of points. So I think it'll be an interesting, fun watch.
I want to bring up the graphic again, Will. I think, one player that I'm looking forward to watching is Sam Hartman today. I saw a comment on Twitter today that Sam Hartman for the first time is playing in a real offense, no longer in that slow mesh offense at Wake Forest. He's going to be starting for Notre Dame, forced Tyler Buckner to transfer to Alabama. I'm interested in seeing what Notre Dame looks like with Sam Hartman under the helm. We don't know if they have really an established guy or a guy that we have high expectations for as far as the wide receiver position. Of course, they lose the tight end Michael Mayer, the productive tight end last season. And so now it's kind of a new face there. Is Audric Estime the face of the offense? Jaden Greathouse, the freshman that a lot of people like, does he produce today? So, all right. So that's the quarterback position. Let's go ahead and go to the running back position. Nicholas Ian Allen, you mentioned Say Bangura. For people who don't know, who weren't watching MAC football this last year, why do we have the high expectations for Bangura this year?
Just simply he's a good player. There was a lot of excitement about him coming in as a true freshman a couple of years ago. A little higher rated player than Ohio normally gets, and they were careful with him. Only gave him 4 games, limited to a redshirt season. And so he was a little under the radar coming in last year, but there certainly was some excitement, and he just stepped up and became immediately one of the best running backs in the MAC. So productive player, went for over 1,000 yards last year. That included missing a game, 13 touchdowns on the ground, can catch the ball out of the backfield, had 27 receptions. He's just solid all around and really just getting started as a third-year sophomore.
I need to note that Marcus Crosby out, Anwar Lewis out, Cedric Alexander, the freshman, allegedly third on the depth chart, but we've heard nothing but positive things from the true freshman there at Vanderbilt. Chris, is there a running back specifically on this list that you're looking forward to watching today and who could have a good performance here in week 0?
I'm actually really interested in the split between Marshawn Lloyd and Austin Jones at USC. Austin Jones was there last year. He was the backup to Travis Dye. He was good. Marshawn Lloyd coming from my South Carolina Gamecocks, and I think we had really high expectations for him when he entered school. Tore his ACL his first year. Last year was the first time we really saw him back. A really high-end recruit, and I think he's still got some juice. I don't know how much, but I'm interested to see how the split works today because, they're favored by 31.5, so you're going to see both backs. I'd like to see who looks better, who fits better in this offense, because that's going to determine a lot of fantasy value for the rest of the season.
I think one running back that I'm looking forward to is that freshman, Cedric Alexander. I know he's listed as third, but anytime you can get a true freshman who performs for 4 years in the college fantasy space, that's a really, really valuable thing. I think we saw it with I'm trying to think of the guy who just was at UTSA and drafted by the Raiders. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but
McCormick? Sincere McCormick?
Yes, Sincere McCormick, of course, performing all of his years there at UTSA. That's a very valuable thing when you can get a freshman to carry the load on your college fantasy team. JJ, any particular running back that you're looking forward to? You were a safety down there playing high school football in Texas, so you were coming up and smacking some of these guys who are, including Deuce Vaughn, by the way. JJ played against Deuce Vaughn in high school, the Dallas Cowboys running back. Who are you looking forward to watching today?
The main dude I'm looking at right now is Audric Estime, the Notre Dame running back. He's a big dude. It's weird, though, because he's, bigger on the top than he is on the bottom. And he's also, he's pretty tall and pretty big. So he kind of reminds me of Derrick Henry. And I think today's going to be a good matchup because Navy's – they got a pretty good run defense. But I think he's got some NFL. I think he's got some NFL prospect to him. So we'll see.
Speaking of NFL prospects, Marshawn Lloyd transfers from the real USC to the new USC, a player that we had high expectations for as a freshman. As a freshman before he tore his ACL, a comp to like Frank Gore. I remember Trey Sermon in 2020 when he transferred from Oklahoma to Ohio State. I think that there's the potential that Marshawn Lloyd has that type of impact at USC before he potentially makes the jump to the NFL. One impactful season at USC, make the jump to the league, maybe a day 3 NFL draft pick, something like that. The other player that I want to pay attention to is Keenan Christian, who started at the aforementioned USC on the West Coast, a smaller speedster. You're talking about potentially a thinner guy, smaller guy, but one of the faster running backs in the country. He's now at San Diego State. We've seen San Diego State have a lot of success at the running back position, Nicholas Ian Allen. I don't know what that depth chart looks like, but we've seen, from Rashad Penny. And before that, it was another guy who was drafted by the Eagles. Again, I'm forgetting his name, but San Diego State has had a lot of success at the running back position. Should we have high expectations for Keenan Christian this year, or is he not the type of player that we would expect to carry a load?
Well, so I've seen conflicting things. One, you said the depth chart, and the San Diego State depth chart is a little confusing. There are 14 starters listed, 14 different positions, including 3 separate running back positions. Keenan Christian is at the top of the running back F position, but he's got an or by his name with Cam Davis. But everything I've read, we talked about this a lot on C2 days all the past month. Christian has been considered by the folks close to the program. We cover it on a day-to-day basis. The San Diego Union Tribune beat as the number 1 guy. So seeing him with that or is a little bit unexpected. Cam Davis is the starter at the running back T position. But they've got some depth there, but I definitely agree that Christian is really excited to see his speed on display, get a heavier workload, and the depth chart might not or doesn't necessarily reflect what it seems like the folks who are reporting on the program expect. They expect Christian to get a pretty heavy workload, but they do, have the potential to play a lot of guys. So we'll just sort of have to see how it shakes out.
Before we go to the wide receiver position, if you're in the chat, I want you to let us know where you're watching from and what storylines are you looking for here on week 0 or in 2023 overall. We're going to get to storylines later on in the show. So go ahead, let us know. Do that. Let us know where you're watching from. Like the video and subscribe to the channel wherever you are watching. Let's go ahead and bring up that wide receiver position here, Will. Now, I think I'm particularly watching for the wide receivers at USC. There's Brennan Rice, Jerry Rice's son. They have Mario Williams, who I've had high expectations for now for 2 years, hasn't really produced. But then they got a lot of dynamic freshmen. You've got Zachariah Branch, who's the allegedly Tyreek Hill comp, but he is a very explosive freshman. You got Mekhi Lemon, who can do a little bit of everything. And then Chris Moxley, quite frankly, I have drafted Deuce Robinson, who was going to be a tight end, is now playing wide receiver at USC. 6'6", 225, lots of range, played at Pinnacle High School there in Arizona, one of the premier high school programs in the country. I'm looking for which freshmen get run, but we're going to be watching Sam Wigloose. We're going to be watching Dorian Singer, the transfer from Arizona to USC. Which of these wide receivers are you looking forward to watching here in week 0, Chris?
I'm just going to keep it with my favorite passing attack in the country, which is the Ohio Bobcats. Love Curtis Rourke. Really, Sam Wigloose does this year. They were such a fun pair last season. We had Wigloose, who was a walk-on at Ohio State, is now potentially the best wide receiver in the MAC. Really fun player. I like that whole wide receiver room, to be honest, including Jacoby Jones and Miles Cross. Sam Wigloose will lead that lead that group, and he's a fun player. Really, really excited to see what that passing attack does today against the San Diego State defense that does not return a lot of production.
JJ, were you down there in Texas smacking in any of these wide receivers in high school, or who are you looking forward to watching here in week 0?
None of these receivers, but one of my friends does know Mekhi Lemon. He played him in California. But I've got a couple bets on Will Shepherd. I think him and Sam Hartman should be doing well. And then I like Smoke Harris a little bit. I think it was Trey Harris that transferred, and he was the number 1 receiver over there. So I think he's got something to prove, and I think he probably can do it.
Smoke Harris here at Louisiana Tech playing this afternoon. Nicholas Ian Allen. I see Mario Williams, number 6 on our list here. We've had high expectations for the diminutive slot shifty wide receiver out of the Tampa area, now there at USC. Could this be the year? Could this be the year where we get an explosive season from Mario Williams?
I think it's very possible. I'm a little concerned that Mario Williams, Brendan Rice, even Dorian Singer a little bit, the freshman some. I mean, there's just so many good players that they're going to play, a lot of them, roll them in and out, put 3 on the field, run, deep routes, and then jog off to the sideline, put the next group in. So it's got the potential, I think, at least until that top group really sort of solidifies itself. Kyron Hudson's in there as well. I mean, he's listed as a co-starter with Rice unofficially on the depth chart. So it might take a week or two or until they get into conference play to work itself out as to really who the go-to players are. But I think Mario Williams has as high a ceiling as anybody on that roster. So seems to have a good rapport with Caleb Williams. That certainly helps. Has flashed recently as the spring game. So I do think that I'm optimistic, I'll say, but I wonder if the ultimate ceiling for his production might be limited a little bit because there's just so many good players who are going to be competing for targets.
Chris, I want to come to you and talk about sophomore wide receiver Jaden McGowan at Vanderbilt last season as a true freshman, one of the more productive true freshmen in the country, 44 receptions, 453 yards, 3 touchdowns, 10.3 yards per catch average, 5'8", 181. For those who haven't watched a lot of Vanderbilt football, Jaden McGowan is a guy that if you're playing in college fantasy, you might be starting every week or selectively on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, he's an interesting player. I actually think he's a guy with a lot of value on his receiving total this week. It's 37.5. I think he's going to go over that. I think that he could have a really productive day. I'm not sure Hawaii has the athletes to keep up with him. Just like he's a really explosive player. And I think he and Will Shepherd could just go wild today on that defense. McGowan is definitely a really fun guy. I think he's going to be really successful out of conference because, Vanderbilt, I think they're going to struggle a little bit in the SEC. They always do, but we'll see a chance for him to shine, I think, a little bit with this matchup today. So I'm excited to watch him. I'm really excited about this whole Vanderbilt offense in a game where they're, 17.5 point favorites, although money seems to be coming in on Hawaii this morning, especially at Circa, which is interesting. But yeah, that should be a good game.
Will Shepherd and Jaden McGowan give you reason to watch Vanderbilt. 7:30, Hawaii at Vanderbilt. And Chris Less, as you mentioned, Vanderbilt is a 17.5 point favorite. So go ahead and watch those wide receivers. All right, let's bring up the tight end position here. I feel like all of these names are made-up names. These are all made-up names. You think that the tight end position, the landscape is a little bit bare in the NFL. It feels that way, Nicholas Ian Allen, here in week 0. However, Josiah Miamin, he's an Iowa transfer there at FIU, pictured on the screen. If we're going to have expectations for somebody, why not this Iowa tight end, this former Iowa tight end now at FIU?
Yeah, and he'll be stepping in for a fairly productive tight end and Rivaldo Fairweather, who transferred to Auburn. So the coaching staff there at FIU, options are limited for them offensively. And when you've got a talented player at the tight end position, I would expect that he will be featured. We'll have plenty of opportunities, and seems to me a pretty clear pick to be the top guy today. Part of the reason is San Jose State, where there are a couple of quality tight ends, Dominic Mazzotti and Sam Olson, are really, I believe it, that they're co-starters listed as an or there. And of course, there's a little bit of uncertainty with Justin Lockhart. Will he be available for San Jose State, their top wide receiver, expected to be their top wide receiver? So I would expect that both of their tight ends will be featured pretty heavily, but will kind of eat into one another as far as their overall level of production goes. So yeah, Mammon is I think the safe pick to be the most productive player today. But there are some interesting names here as well. I mean, Gino Campiati, UMass tight end, was their starting quarterback in week 1 last year. Has played a little bit. I think he started his career at Northern Arizona, played some receiver and tight end. So he was a running quarterback. Be pretty interesting to see if they are creative with the way that they use him. So I don't know. We'll learn a thing or two about some of these players. Merriman seems like the one to beat, but I think we also probably shouldn't forget about Mitchell Evans at Notre Dame taking over for Michael Mayer. That tight end position's had multiple injuries. They're going to be without multiple guys who are expected to compete with Evans for the top spot on the depth chart. So with him a little more solidified, probably going to have an opportunity to step in and get quite a bit of that production that Mayer took with him to the NFL.
Let's shout out to Brett, Jim, Shane, Jared, all in the chat. Desi, I see you guys. Thank you for joining us this week. I want to point out Mark Redmond, the tight end. I'm going to listen. San Jose State and San Diego State are playing today. I will mix them up. Mark Redmond is at San Diego State. However, he started his career at Washington and was a relatively high-level recruit. I have him rostered on a few places and kind of forgot about him. I see him pop up on our projected on our rankings here today. Mark Redmond there at San Diego State. Chris Moxley, give us a reason to watch some tight end here on this list.
Well, you named one of my favorites, which is Mark Redmond. I think he's, big guy, 6'6", 6'5", 250, 260. Outside of Mekhi Shaw, who I think is going to be the wide receiver 1, I mean, Redmond should be a big part of this passing offense. And they brought in Ryan Lindley as their offensive coordinator. I expect them to pass a little bit more than they have in the past, which was, when you think of San Diego State, you think of rush heavy, 2,000-yard rushers like Rashad Penny. I expect it to be a little bit more balanced this year. Jalen Maiden, who's their quarterback, and we'll talk about him later, I think, a little bit. He threw the ball a lot more than I think they wanted to last year, but I think they're going to just keep sticking with it instead of that. So Redmond's going to be a guy who flashes. I like the San Jose State duo as well that Nick brought up. Both Dominic Mazzotti and Sam Olson are really solid players. They'll both be heavily featured, especially if the wide receiver Justin Lockhart can't go today. So really good tight end duo. And USC is obviously a heavy favorite here. They just can out-athlete them. But the one thing I would pay attention to is in the second half, when those starters come out for USC, how does the tight end look? How does the entire offense look? Because I think there's some value to be had on that San Jose State team total. And I think those two tight ends are going to be a big part of it.
Now, we're going to have you covered. Obviously, week 0, we have a little bit of a shorter slate. And a lot of college fantasy leagues don't even start until week 1. But we're going to have you rankings every single week, wide receiver, running back, tight end. We're going to be going through. We'll be deep to help you with your lineup decisions. If you have lineup questions, you can add them to the chat. We're going to cover you from the CFF angle. We're also going to cover you from an NFL draft angle. If we could bring Barnabus Lee onto the screen. Barnabus Lee is the NFL draft correspondent at Campus2Canton. Barnabus, if he's ready. Is Barnabas ready? Is he ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Barnabas is ready. Barnabas has shaken Dane Brugler's hand. And there's a code amongst guys who have shaken Dane Brugler's hand. We'll have him every single week to talk about matchups that he's looking forward to from an NFL draft perspective. Barnabus, week 0, smaller slate. Tell me the players, matchups that you're looking forward to watching here in week 0.
Yeah, so generally every week I'll be covering matchups, but kind of this week I'm just kind of looking at players just because it's a lighter slate for week 0. Let's start with some quarterbacks, right? Curtis Rourke and Gavin Hardison were on your list earlier. And these are guys that can potentially play themselves into backup consideration for the 2024 NFL draft. And, guys that we expect to be super productive throughout the year. And so these are kind of interesting storylines here as well, where Curtis Rourke is Nathan Rourke's brother. Nathan Rourke of that famous highlight play,
that
Jaguars
highlight play
versus
from the
Cowboys.
Jaguars.
Yeah, absolutely. That's his older brother who also played at Ohio, so Curtis Rourke won 2022 MAC Player of the Year. So obviously there's that production pedigree. But obviously he's coming off injury. I think right now he actually does have a good backup profile, right? He's pretty smooth. He has some small little nitpicky mechanical things that you could fix, and definitely coaches would like that more. But as of right now, he makes the throws that he needs to do. He doesn't have the amazing arm power, but it's decent accuracy and good footwork. And he could probably use a little better pocket awareness, but you're not expecting much more than that from a backup quarterback, right? You just want someone in there that can make basic throws. And right now, Curtis Rourke can definitely do that.
Last season, Jake Haener was my G5 quarterback to watch as far as the NFL draft was concerned. Expectations similar between Haener and Rourke in 2023?
I would say Rourke I was not a Haener guy. I know you were. Haener was tiny. Mike, Valerie, and I, when we were in Mobile, we noted all the quarterbacks looked tiny because you had Tyson Baggan out there, Jaron Hall, and Jake Haener. Rourke's bigger than that. So I think there's a little bit more potential. Obviously, his brother's been floating around on the tail end of depth charts for a few years now. I think Curtis might be a better prospect than his brother as of right now, just because of a better production profile with similar athletic skills. And I think Curtis might have a better arm, but not like substantially. So I'd say we can expect similar production, obviously not from the same level of pedigree as in terms of offensive system as someone like Jake Haener. But, obviously we're expecting this Ohio offense to just pop off this year. So, a
lot of weapons there.
Throwing to my vote for the Zero Swag Award and Sam Wiglis. Dude's just got to find better looking cleats, man.
All right. Who else you looking forward to here on week 0?
Yeah, so I also mentioned Gavin Hardison. Some people have him higher than Rourke. I think Rourke is a better prospect coming up, but he has much messier mechanics than even Rourke. But somehow the throws that come out are very polished. I look at those throws, and it's the Conference USA is a 2-team race, right? It's Western Kentucky and UTEP, and we like Western Kentucky, I think, at Campus2Canton, broadly speaking. But UTEP also, had players littered around the all-conference preseason team. So, we're expecting big things out of UTEP, and Gavin Hardison is going to have to drag them up there. Another guy I'm looking at this week is Jarrett Kingston, interior offensive lineman for USC. He started at left tackle for Washington State last year. It was Cam Ward's bookend. He kicks into right guard, which I think is a really good move for him. Obviously, Caleb Williams was running for his life almost every single game last year. Even with someone like his name is Andrew Voorhees blocking for him, who tore his ACL, and so that's probably why he dropped a little further in the draft than some would argue he should have gone. I would argue Kingston is a much more physical player with good feet. He has very good feet, but his body doesn't move quite as quick as his feet do. And so it's a lot of feet movement without the actual movement of his body, which is why it's really good that he's kicking to the phone booth at right guard. And so hopefully he can show
watching both the USC offensive and I think, quite frankly, I think the defensive line is going to be in question today, given how USC's defense fared last year very poorly. So, all right, Jarrett Kingston. Who else you watching for today, week 0?
I'm watching the Notre Dame run defense, right? They're playing Navy today, Notre Dame is. And they, Navy has that, they run the ball a lot, frankly, as all the service academies do. And so we got three quick prospects from Notre Dame that are all on the defensive side that I'm expecting big things out of today. And if they should play up to the level that we expect them to play, then Navy should just be shut down. First is Ohio State transfer Javonte Jean-Baptiste. This is a 6'5" edge. But he's still only 200. I think he was listed at 215 pounds. That's like very skinny, especially at that height, right? And so he definitely needs to put weight on without losing the twitch that is his calling card. He spent 4 years at Ohio State. Now he comes into Notre Dame. He's super long, but he just needs to develop some counters because he's just relying on athleticism right now. And if he develops some counters, he should have some sort of NFL profile. He's not like other Ohio State edges like Zach Harrison or those guys. He's much more of a twitched up guy, even at 6'5". And then you have the linebacker duo of, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, but Maris Lufau and JD Bertrand. They're both kind of mid to late round guys, but Lufau is this just big, burly, old school looking guy who plays like a new school guy, while JD Bertrand is has the new school body with an old school play style, right? So Lufau is this big, strong guy. He's super athletic in short bursts, but he doesn't have like the long speed. And he even lines up at edge sometimes. So we'll see how that outside contain works for him. I think he profiles best as a blitz package linebacker at the next level. But he kind of has that Troy Polamalu hair thing going for him. So he just looks maybe more physical because of that too, you know? And then JD Bertrand's your typical, you know, hate to say it, white linebacker, right? He's like a little unathletic, doesn't know how to move backwards. But he does hit well going downhill. My only concern is he's only 6'1", 210 pounds. He's a really small guy. So those are the guys I'm watching today.
You can follow Barnabus at PKJB Lee. He's going to be joining us every week to give us matchups to pay attention to. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about storylines that we're paying attention to here in week 0 in 2023. And I want to hear some of yours. I think we could even take calls. So we'll figure that out when we come back. This is the Tailgate on Better Sports Network.
It's college football game day, and we're getting you ready for all the action on campus to Canton.
I feel like this is a quietly contentious point in Dynasty Fantasy Football, what it means to actually be rebuilding. Some people say you should never truly be rebuilding. How do you view the rebuilding versus competing dichotomy in Dynasty?
So I will be the first person to acknowledge that my preferred format of fantasy football is just redraft. The years that I have played Dynasty, it has been I've drafted a win now team because I've seen people that have just gotten into the cycle of rebuilding and thus they just don't make any progress. So if you're rebuilding for the 5th year in a row, I just, I don't know exactly how you get out of it, but yeah, it's definitely something that can happen. And a lot of people, especially when we come out of the NFL draft, everyone's just instantly shipping off, draft picks and everything. So, I mean, it's definitely something that can happen.
Joey, do you feel similarly to it? Do you feel like you see people getting stuck in the rebuilding loop?
I mean, I would say people that try to rebuild in the beginning of seasons, of their fantasy seasons, I see them get stuck in that rut. I would really try to only ever rebuild if I knew I was going to miss the playoffs. Like, I'm always trying to play to win, even if it's maybe I don't know.
I think my big thing is the word rebuild is a much shorter time frame than I think most people say it should be. Like, they look at rebuild as like 3 years out competing. Rebuild, you're looking to compete next season. You know what I mean? Like, if you're doing it now, you're looking to revamp, and maybe there's a one season where you ship it off, but that very next season you should be competing. If you're doing it like that, I'm cool with it, but you got to have a plan, not just keep getting the young players, keep getting the draft picks. Otherwise, you end up like Tim. Maybe not like Tim who gets a bye, but you make the playoffs, you're in that like 4 to 6 range every year, just hovering in the middle. Nothing ever gets better, nothing ever gets worse.
I think I play like you in Dynasty, Simon. I play in 3-year windows.
100%. That's my go-to. And with the rate at which Dynasty leagues turn over, you should really only ever play in a 3-year window.
Felix Sharpe, Nicholas Ian Allen, JJ Parker, Chris Moxley from the Campus2Canton team joining you here on the Tailgate on Better Sports Network. We're going to discuss storylines here in a second. But yes, you can call into the show. We're live and in effect. And if you've got takes that you want us to hear, you can call into the show. You can chat with us, interact with us, subscribe to the Better Sports YouTube page, subscribe to the Campus2Canton YouTube page. Will is going to drop the link, the call-in link, to both chats. So if you want to come in and give us your takes here this morning in week 0, you can do it. College football storylines. I mean, the difference between us and the NFL is that the player turnover in college football is constant in the NFL. And the 2023 NFL draft class took a lot away from us. You know, from Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson and C.J. Stroud to the wide receiver position. We lost Quentin Johnston, Jackson Smith and Jigba, a lot of established names we lost in the 2023 NFL draft class. So we've got a new landscape here in college football. JJ, I want to throw it to you first. With this new landscape, what is one of the storylines you are looking forward to seeing play out here in 2023?
I mean, I'm a Bama fan, so I think one of the biggest storylines this year is Bama's worst team. I think it's Bama's worst team in a decade at least, because like losing Bryce is probably the biggest thing, probably the biggest loss in all of football. And I think that I don't think that Bama really knows the direction they're going in. They still haven't decided a starting quarterback, and I mean I think it'll be Jalen Milroe, but you know, how well will he play and how long will he start if he does? And I think that there's a lot of questions in the receiving room. It's just never been good. And then also I think the RB room is really stacked. And I used to be a Jace McClellan guy, but I don't know, after he tore his ACL like 2 years ago or something, and I don't know, he's just not showing that burst that he used to. And I think they got some younger guys in the room that should get like the tout. But I don't think that Nick Saban, I don't think he's got the balls to put him in.
Worst Alabama team in years. I mean, they're going to come after you. You can find JJ at jparker1738 on Twitter if you want to holler at him. Yeah, they do lose a lot. Bryce Young, Will Anderson, Jahmyr Gibbs. My Detroit Lions got both Jahmyr Gibbs and Brian Branch. They lose Jordan Battle, Cameron Latu, Henry To'o, who had transferred in from Tennessee, the linebacker core there. I mean, they absolutely lose a lot. Chris Moxley, when you hear the worst Bama team in years, that's, I mean, they're not going to like that statement, but there is some truth to it. Like, this is a team that we don't know what their identity is going to be in 2023.
I have them graded as the worst Bama team since 2016, I think, when I do my power ranks. Yeah, I mean, I took the under on their win total this year when it was just too high. I mean, I think they're still the second team when we talk about national championship odds. They're 6-1. Georgia's 2-1. Jesus, but they're ahead of Ohio State and they're ahead of Michigan. Now, I'm not sure that they're better than either of those teams. They're ahead of LSU. Not sure they're better than LSU this year. I mean, there's a lot of questions on this team, and I don't know that they're going to be able to solve them within a single offseason. And I mean, the nice thing is that you get 1 billion 5 stars every year or high end 4 stars. And you just hope that those dudes can come in and play immediately. They just didn't get that at the quarterback position. I mean, they got Ty Simpson a couple of years ago, and I've been a big fan of Ty Simpson, but obviously there's inconsistency there. I thought he played the best in the spring game out of all the quarterbacks, but I think it's going to be Jalen Milroe, and we saw him last year. He almost lost it. He almost threw away the game when they played Texas A&M. So there's concerns, and I agree with JJ, man. This is not the best Alabama team. It's probably the worst we've seen in quite a while.
Now, the man to my left, Nicholas Ian Allen, he produces the C2C Winning Edge content there at Campus2Canton.com. Depth charts, statistical projections, returning productions, projected spreads. All of that data comes from this man. Nick, when you look at Alabama from a data perspective, is it the worst Bama team that we've seen in years?
It is. Alabama is at its lowest point in our roster strength ratings since started CFB Winning Edge ahead of the 2018 season. They are lowest in our team strength power rankings than any point in that history. That said, they're top 5 in roster strength. They're 4th in team strength. So it's not, it might be the worst Bama team, talking raw talent numbers, adjusted for experience, career production, things like that. At any point in a season in the last 5-6 years, but they're still one of the elite programs in college football, and I think that they pretty much deserve the benefit of the doubt for now. Last year's team was not elite on the field. We do team performance numbers, which are advanced statistics, try to basically put a grade on each team, how well they perform on the field. Last year, Alabama was 4th in overall team performance, but they were 11th on offense and 9th on defense. And that's a step back from what we're used to. We're used to top 5 in both offense and defense. So that, coupled with they rank 114th overall in returning production, 108th on offense, 107th on defense. They had to go into the transfer portal for the second year in a row, which is just something, we are not used to seeing. They're probably going to start at least one transfer on defense. Trey Amos, who is at Louisiana most recently. Jalen Key, a transfer from UAB, is also in the mix. Tresman Marshall, transfer from Georgia. And it's just, that to me, I don't want to, I don't know. I can talk myself into circles quite a bit, so you guys will have to watch me on that. But it worries me just a little bit. It seems like Alabama is kind of different. They shouldn't have to fill holes in the transfer portal, and the fact that they are going in the last couple of years grabbing 1 or 2 guys at spots where they are weak or seemingly comparatively speaking, that worries me just a little bit. So I'm still high on Alabama. Still think that they are capable of beating any team on their schedule, capable of beating any other team in the country. They're favored in our projected point spreads by at least 5.5 points in every game at this point. So they're more beatable today than maybe we've seen in the past few years or have gotten used to. But they're still very capable of beating anyone else also.
Of course, they got the second leg of that home and home with Texas. If there was one game, college or NFL, that I could go to this year, it would be that Texas-Alabama game in Tuscaloosa this year. JJ mentioned Jace McClellan, who is set to be one of the top running backs, one of the top 2 running backs for Alabama. He was in that 2020 class. That's the class that just went to the NFL draft. Bijan Robinson, Zach Evans, Jahmyr Gibbs, Tank Bigsby, all a part of that class. Jace McClellan, before he tore his ACL in his second year, he had the highest spark score, the athletic score in that class. So we're talking about, and a guy who flashed as a freshman in a stacked running back room. So if Jace McClellan can get healthy, he's going to share the backfield with Roydell Williams on a team that's probably going to be a throwback to what they were before Tua Tagovailoa. Defense, running the ball, playing conservatively. So Jace McClellan, overall, we don't have as high of expectations for Alabama, but we could see an explosive season from one of the 2 running backs. Jace McClellan would appear to have a really high ceiling given his athleticism before the ACL injury. Chris Moxley, what's one of your storylines that you're looking forward to here in 2023? And you're muted.
Of course.
Take a shot. That's the first one. We're getting warmed up. Week 0.
It's week 0. It's week 0. Yeah, it took us 45 minutes to get there, so that's pretty good, all things considered. I want to know what happens with Penn State this year. It's, in terms of odds, they're over 5-1 to win the Big Ten. Ohio State, Michigan are almost tied. It's not particularly close. I think Penn State can win this conference, and I think they can go to the playoffs, but a couple things need to happen. The offensive line needs to maintain some of the consistency that they had last year. It was a big issue 2 years ago, improved last year. Olufashanu returns, would have been a top 5-10 NFL draft pick at tackle. So you have that. The defense is, I think, just as good or better. Lot of talent there. You got Chop Robinson, who I think is a first round pick. I mean, some serious boys to play. The question at the end of the day is, what is Drew Aller? Is he that dude? Can he develop into the guy that we think he is? I mean, we've comps to Josh Allen, big guy, has improved his mechanics. Every year, there's some really interesting content about his journey through what it looks like to improve a quarterback's mechanics that I've always found interesting. But he struggled when we've seen him in the spring game. I mean, that Penn State offense looked pretty bad, and they're playing against a second-team defense, so that always concerns me. But
if I could interrupt you here, anytime we've seen Drew Aller in a practice setting, the Under Armour All-American game,
looks terrible.
The spring game, he's looked terrible, but then you put him in the actual game, and the dude absolutely balls.
Yeah, he played twice last year. He played against, I think, Ohio and Purdue. Mm-hmm. Some of the throws he made against Ohio, it's Ohio, but it didn't matter who he was playing against because the completions that he was making were like high end throws, like NFL flashes you saw in his first start or for his first action when Sean Clifford got hurt. So if Aller takes the step that I think a lot of us think he can. You're looking at a Penn State team that I think is undervalued in the market and I think can win this conference. I mean, I think they can beat Michigan or Ohio State, but Aller needs to be what we think he is, which is a potential Heisman candidate.
Nick, what does the data show? Is Penn State a team that can compete with Michigan or Ohio State this year, or are they really just a second-tier team and they're not yet there?
So the beauty of the way we calculate things, in my opinion, is we do build in, the ability for players to raise their individual player rating through the course of the year through production. We also started doing projected production a little bit to give some teams and players a boost when they are replacing, a veteran at specifically the quarterback position where it matters most. And Alabama's a good example. Penn State's a good example. We expect that they're probably going to be fine. I mean, there's going to be maybe a little bit of a drop off. So Drew Aller and Penn State, there's room for improvement in our position ratings. Penn State is 50th in the country. And, as Mox mentioned, that from a pure talent standpoint, Aller has the ability to be one of the top quarterbacks in college football. We just haven't seen it yet. So over the course of the first few weeks of the season, if he has a great start to the year against West Virginia, Delaware, it gets a little tougher with Illinois and Iowa, but has the ability to add production to his rating. That is going to help Penn State move a little bit in our power rankings. We have them 11th, third in the Big Ten. So they're starting at a point where they're still a dangerous team. We do have them as underdogs against Ohio State and Michigan, but they are favored in every other game by a touchdown and more, basically. So there's a lot of winnable games on the schedule, and I do think that leading up to the halfway point of the season when they play Ohio State, Aller's going to be getting himself up to speed. He will have improved his individual player rating the way we calculate things. Penn State probably will be at that point a top 10 team, maybe top 8, top 7, something like that. And then our projections, probably will tighten a little bit, quite honestly, because there's maybe a little less room for improvement for a team like Ohio State or Michigan. They're not maxed out by any means, but we probably have a little bit better idea of what they are today. And Penn State, in my opinion, but also in the way we calculate things, they're a team that I think is going to get better over the course of the year and potentially, close that gap a little bit. So I do think that they are capable of beating Ohio State and or Michigan. I am not quite ready to say that they are going to be able to get it done and break through, win the Big Ten, make it to the playoff. But if Aller is as good as we think he can be, that ceiling is there, I do think.
Can I ask a follow-up quick to Nick? I don't know if you have the numbers in front of you, but I have it as Of course. I have it as under a field goal in the Penn State Michigan game. Is yours? Do you have it that close as well?
Right around a field goal, 3.15 right now.
That's a legit toss up. So, I mean, I love Penn State. I'm glad it's not crazy for you, because then it would have felt a lot worse about that. But no, I think there's some damage. So I want
to paint a picture of the expectations here. I want to paint a picture of the expectations for Drew Aller here. For those who might be new to college football, 6'5", 243 pounds. He's a first-round startup pick if you're playing in Campus2Canton C2C leagues. He's my quarterback 3 in the rankings, right after Caleb Williams and Drake May. When we talk about his high school tape, talk about anticipatory throws, throwing in the middle of the field. He's really not afraid to let that ball go before a wide receiver breaks. He can make. He's mobile for a 243-pound running back. Throw off platform. We saw the game against Ohio. One of the touchdown passes he got some pressure in his face, rolled to his right, and threw that sidearm throw to the end zone for a touchdown. I think I have questions about Penn State's wide receiver core. They get Dante Cephas in, the transfer from Kent State. Everybody transferred out of Kent State this year after Sean Lewis went to be the offensive coordinator at Ohio. But Drew Aller has the potential to be a really exciting player. And I think when you see him play today, you'll see why the comp is Josh Allen. It's because of his size, because of his mobility at his size, and quite frankly, just the gunslinger mold. He has all of that stuff. So let's see, is it me? Let me go as far as what I'm looking forward to as storylines go. I think you have to pay attention to the backup positions at Texas, at Alabama, and at Ohio State, allegedly. Now, Malik Murphy, if you don't know, a high 4-star prospect backing up Quinn Ewers, I think that he's a much better fit to do what Steve Sarkisian would want from his quarterback position, as opposed to Hudson Card, who transferred to Purdue. We saw Quinn Ewers not play so well last season. Does he develop? Or maybe, I'm just throwing it out there, could we see Malik Murphy at some point during the season? I don't know. I mean, they have a great offensive core there at Texas, even with Bijan Robinson jumping to the Atlanta Falcons. I want to pay attention to, again, that backup position. And let's go to Ohio State, because this is the thing that we've been talking about pretty much for the entire week since Ryan Day announced that the quarterback competition would be ongoing. Now, in years past, he had announced the starter 2 weeks before the season. C.J. Stroud and Justin Fields, those 2 previous years. This year, he hasn't announced the starter yet. You've got Devin Brown, again, a high 4-star recruit out of Corner Canyon High School in Utah. It's the same school that Zach Wilson went to. And then you got Kyle McCord out of Philadelphia, played at that prep school, St. Joe's prep school, with Marvin Harrison Jr. Kyle McCord is the traditional drop-back passer, plays from the pocket. He was a 5-star recruit. He's been in the system longer. He was competing with C.J. Stroud for that starting position. Now, Ryan Day's tendency had been to play the player who's been in the system longer. I think the fact that Devin Brown, I think the fact that Kyle McCord hasn't been announced as a starter is indicative of Devin Brown causing a problem in training camp. And when I say causing a problem, I mean I think that he is outplaying Kyle McCord in camp, and that's the only reason why Devin Brown or Kyle McCord has not been announced as the starter. Chris, you mentioned that we could see both of them in week 1 against Indiana. We might have a situation that's similar to Jim Harbaugh last year, the way he played Cade McNamara and J.J. McCarthy, where, all right, we'll give each of these guys a start and then figure out who the starter is there in week 3. But, Chris, all indications are that Devin Brown, a gunslinger out of Utah coming down near Ohio State, that he's causing problems, he's causing issues. He might be beating Kyle McCord.
He might be, but I know how. I mean, we're live, so you guys can roast me for this, but Ryan Day is He's yellow. He's a coward. You saw he cost them the game because he was a coward last year against UGA. He won't go to Devin Brown to start because Kyle McCord is a safe option. You have two of the best receivers in the country, if not the two best, in Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka. You have a litany of talented freshmen and sophomores behind them. I mean, you just need someone who can get them the ball, and Kyle McCord can do that. Devin Brown might cost them a pick here and there. I guarantee at the end of the day, though, that his EPA per play is going to be higher. He's going to be more efficient. You're going to see a better, more explosive offense. Not sure that Ryan Day wants to... he's going to shrivel when Devin Brown throws a pick or like God forbid, 2 picks in a game. I don't think Kyle McCord is going to put them in that same situation, even though I think Devin Brown is the better player and raises his ceiling. I'd like to see Devin Brown. I think it's going to be Kyle McCord to start, and I think both are going to play because they play Indiana week 1 and they're 4 touchdown favorites. So I expect them both to see a game action.
I've moved Devin Brown up to quarterback 5 in my rankings. Devin Brown averaged 19.7 yards per attempt in high school. Anything in college, anything over 10 is we consider kind of elite. Devin Brown, almost 20 yards per attempt, and that's not on 50 pass attempts. He threw for like 4,300 yards as a senior at Corner Canyon, averaging 20 yards per pass attempt. Now, Kyle McCord, to his right, he was like 17 or point something in high school, but 20 yards per attempt is really, really up there. One of the reasons why I like Devin Brown is because we saw Ryan Day evolve in the last game, in the championship, or in the playoff game against Georgia. When I say evolve, C.J. Stroud had 12 rushing attempts in that game. Up until that point, he had never had more than 6 rushing attempts in any given game. And one of those games was against Northwestern. If you remember that game last year, it was windy, it was raining, it was a defensive struggle for a little bit of the game. It makes sense to have your quarterback running that. Ryan Day has not let his quarterbacks run the ball. If he's changed that, if he's going to let a quarterback actually run the ball and give 12, 13, 15 rushing attempts, and Devin Brown starts. Devin Brown is 3 times the athlete on the ground that C.J. Stroud was. If he's going to run the ball, if Devin Brown is 1, going to start, and 2, had the green light to take off when he sees it, I think that we're talking about a potential Heisman candidate because we know what Ryan Day's offense produces as far as passing the ball. If you add 600-700 yards rushing in the prime stage that Ohio State has, not only is Devin Brown, going to get those passing statistics, but be the focal point of this offense. We're talking about him having a place in New York at the end of the season as a potential Heisman Trophy finalist. That's the way I see it. JJ, you're laughing. Am I being outlandish there? Devin Brown, we're talking about whether or not he starts. I'm jumping to the point where saying, hey, this guy's going to be in New York in a couple of months.
I think Marvin Harrison has a better chance of being in New York than Devin Brown does, to be honest.
All right. We got somebody's dog joining the show today. We're gonna have to get their takes on the spreads here this afternoon. Nick, I haven't even gotten to you yet. Give me a storyline that you're looking forward to here as we get into week 0.
Well, I'm always interested in what's new. I'm usually not. I say that I'm usually not into rule changes specifically, and we're going to all get annoyed about every game we watch. They talk about rule changes for the first however many minutes, but this year there is one that impacts potentially what I spend a lot of my time working on is projections and the clock rule change that most expect will have a noticeable impact on the number of plays per game. I've seen estimates for a lot of smart people out there who expect we might see roughly 5% fewer plays per game, and that could potentially have an impact on things like over-unders and point totals, production as a whole. Also, opportunities for underdogs to keep games a little closer, a little longer. And so I'm always interested in trends as far as what's new, what we're going to see on the field Offensively, there are a couple of new offenses. We'll get a little bit of a look at Navy today. They are going to be similar, it sounds like, to what they were in the past, but Army is making a move from the traditional triple option. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. Curious to see, because there are some rule changes as far as blocking, how that goes, are going to impact triple option teams, military academies, most than others. But then also, style of play with that expectation of fewer plays. Are there teams like the military academies? Are there teams like Wyoming or others who really operate at just a slow pace, play keep away, often trying to neutralize a talent disadvantage? How is that going to play out? And then, what new can we expect? Some of the most exciting offenses that get people. I was a high school coach for a little bit, and so I pay attention to what high school coaches are excited about. The last couple of years, it's been Coastal Carolina and Kansas, and so when we get high school coaches excited about an offense, it tends to spread. You tend to see that college coaches are probably excited about it too, and things go up and down in different levels. So what's new on that end? What new play callers or what new wrinkles are we going to see that spread through the country from a play calling standpoint? But first and foremost, what am I going to need to do with the numbers based on how many plays we're seeing early on?
Shane in the chat adds that he's looking forward to seeing how Notre Dame's wide receivers develop. Jared calling in from Lawrenceville, Georgia, watching us from Lawrenceville, Georgia. The O-line at San Diego State, have they improved? San Jose State. I told you I was going to do it. San Jose State, have they improved, and can they protect Chevin Cordero? We'll get to more of your storylines, and we're going to do start sits, get back into the rankings, and we'll be actually making our picks on the game. When we come back, this is the Tailgate on Better Sports Network.
What can we expect for you out there on the track tonight?
Listen, I have a wife, 2 kids. I have, full-time jobs. I'm never nervous. I don't even know what that word means. Can you explain what nervous means? No. I'm ready to have fun. I've never done anything like this before. I got asked to be a part of this. This is fascinating. It's so cool to just look around and see what goes on here. So I'm just excited to get out on the horse. And you want trash talk? Is that what you're asking me for? No trash talk. I hope everyone does well.
All right. Everyone's going to do well, but it has to be a winner. So give me your trifecta. Who's going to come in first, second, and third? Heat.
I will go Maria 1, me 2, Willie 3, Moose goes 4th.
Well, it's very simple. I won this event last year. I won my heat, and so the defending champ has to be the favorite. Now, that makes me a little nervous just because I feel like it's hard to repeat. There's a little pressure when you're the favorite, but that being said, I'm still optimistic.
So your heat, it's you,
yes,
Moose and Keith from Better Sports Network, and Willie Colon.
I think Keith might be my stiffest competition, and I asked for this because I actually recruited Keith, if you didn't know. So Keith, if you win, you're welcome.
Malusis is very good. I mean, he knows what he's doing, but I'm going to go with Maria.
Keith is waving to the crowd. He must pay attention because they're off. It's Mark Malusis going for the lead. Maria Marino on the outside, and now Keith Irizarry on the outside with speed, and they're 3 wide into the first turn. Woo! Mark Malusis is locked in for his life. 1:38 and 2. They're into the stretch. Sportscasters Derby 2. And still in front, Keith Irizarry. And now Mark Malusis is trying to squeeze on through.
Come on! Back! Come on! Let's go! Come on, dig it! Yeah!
Keith Irizarry. Keith, you did it all the way, wire to wire. Over Mark Malusis.
Awesome! That was so cool! The champ is here! Keith, what was it like being out there? Adrenaline rush, you were doing the Instagram Live, so there was no panic. You looked cool, calm, collected the whole time, and you won it.
I felt really comfortable. I did. I know you were joking with me before. Are you nervous? Are you whatever? David The driver was awesome. He's like, we're going to win this. I said, all right, let's win this. And he said, let's go. Yeah, I just felt really comfortable. I did. It was fun. We're in the lead. I got Maria Marino on the right side of me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's going to beat us, right? And then out of nowhere, you see Moose coming up this way, and we feel him breathing down our neck. And I'm like,
Moose
no!
on the loose. Watch out.
Moose was definitely on the loose, and we just got Moose by a neck, a nose, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, but again, all of this for a great cause, and it was absolutely awesome to do this. It was cool.
All right, Keith, congratulations. And no matter what, you could always hold this over Moose's head.
Yeah!
Start a free 7-day trial of Fantasy Alarm's All-Pro subscription and get the Fantasy Football Draft Guide and cheat sheet for free. Go to fantasyalarm.com/draft. Go to fantasyalarm.com/draft. The NFL fantasy season kicking underway for redraft. Of course, this is college fantasy. We're getting you ready for week 0. Nicholas Ian Allen, JJ Parker, Chris Moxley, and I'm Felix Sharpe. Go ahead and follow us all on Twitter and drop a like on the video if you haven't already. I see John in the chat. I see Jared in the chat. I see Brandon Lejeune, Mr. Devy Deep Dive himself in the chat. Thank you guys for joining us this morning. Let's go ahead and get everybody ready. Now, of course, not a lot of people are starting college fantasy lineups, but this is what we're going to be able to present to you every single week. If we could bring up the quarterback graphic, Caleb Williams, Curtis Rourke, Chevin Cordero, the transfer from Hawaii to San Jose State, going to be taking on Vanderbilt today. I want to point out Zion Webb. We haven't mentioned Jacksonville State. You should be excited that Jacksonville State is going to be in FBS football this year. If you remember Denard Robinson at Michigan, if you remember Pat White at West Virginia, well, Mr. Rich Rodriguez, who was the head coach for those offenses, he's at Jacksonville State now. They're back in FBS football. Zion Webb is his starting quarterback, or at least to start. They have the transfer Logan Smothers from Nebraska. He's also there in the backfield. Tayshawn Smoot. I know that these are names out there, but we expect Rich Rodriguez's quarterback to run the ball, run it effectively. So could Rich Rodriguez provide another healthy fantasy option at the quarterback position? These are our top 13 quarterbacks for week 0, and you can tune in every single week. We're going to have you, ready to go with your start, sit, lineup decisions and our rankings according to the Campus2Canton projections. So these are our quarterbacks for week 0. Let's get into start and sits. Nicholas Ian Allen for here for week 0. Give me who you are starting and sitting.
So a name that comes to mind for me, and I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth a little bit because you bring up Zion Webb, and I think that from the depth chart perspective, sometimes we get a little scared when we see an or on a depth chart or a guy, not projected as a starter, maybe when we've heard such positive things coming out of fall camp. There's a similar situation for Brendan Rice at USC, and I think this applies to both Webb and Rice, who I would say are worthy of starting today. Let's not be too concerned about the or. I know I mentioned earlier in the show that maybe the high-end upside for USC receivers is a little bit limited because there are so many quality and talented players available. But Brendan Rice, and I know that it was just one game, but it exploded in the bowl game. I really do think proved that he's ready to take his play to the next level. In that game, had 6 catches, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns. I believe that Caleb Williams trusts him. I know that we just recently saw Rice listed as one of Bruce Feldman's freaks on his freaks list. So I'm pretty high on Rice, and I think he's coming in a little bit of a discount. Maybe some folks are scared off by that, or him and Kyron Hudson, but I think that he is worthy of a start. For sit, I'm concerned about Justin Lockhart. He was apparently dealing with an illness the first few days of fall camp, and then was dealing with an upper body injury, a wrist or a hand, was spotted with a cast, has been in and out of practice all month, was not seen at the most recent scrimmage that was available to the media. And, a lot of guys sit out scrimmages, but I don't know. My gut tells me that Justin Lockhart either doesn't play today or is far less than 100%. So he's the best wide receiver by far on that San Jose State team. I just don't have a good feeling. So I think that he's probably not going to play. I probably want to stay away from him today.
No, talk about being muted, huh?
I'm supposed to be a professional. Justin Lockhart, productive wide receiver, 6'3", 194 pounds at San Jose State. Last season, 36 receptions, 578 yards, 1 touchdown, 16.1 per reception. So that's who we're looking for, or that's who Nick is sitting here against USC. USC, a 31-point favorite, 8 p.m. on the Pac-12, the Pac-4 network tonight. Chris Moxley, who are you starting and sitting today in week 0?
Yeah, I'm starting a player we kind of already talked about in Diego Pavia. Really good rusher. I think that's where a lot of his value is going to come from. I like this matchup for them. UMass. I actually think UMass's defense is better than some people think. Some people may realize. And when I say better, I mean they're like maybe not 130th. They're more like 100th, which, I mean, that's a big step up for this team. But Pavia's a good rusher. You're going to have the floor with him. Multiple 200 pass yard games. He really kicked it up like late in the season. So earlier he was kind of inconsistent, but when he got going, I mean, his last 3 weeks, he threw for 9 touchdowns and had 4 on the ground. Like, that'll play for whoever you're starting at quarterback. I think Pavia's in for a big game this week. 7-point favorites. And I think this game will probably maintain competitiveness. So I don't expect him to be game planned out or phased out of the game at all. My sit is San Diego State's Jalen Maiden. I'm all over the place with this dude because Ohio. So they play Ohio, 2-point favorites, 2.5-point favorites, depending where you look. But I just don't trust Jalen Maiden. 25% turnover worthy play rate last year. So 1 in every 4 passes he attempted was turnover worthy. 10 touchdowns, 12 interceptions last year. Only 3 rushing touchdowns, even though he is, I think, a good rusher. None in his last 5. I don't trust this San Diego State offense. I don't trust this entire team, really. I think Brady Hoke is not a good coach when it comes to winning football games. He's 5-8 as a home favorite since taking over in 2020. Fails to cover by an average of 6.3 points. If you watched the MTSU game last year, the bowl game last year against Middle Tennessee State, all they had to do was run out the clock. That's it. That's all they had to do. And they kept throwing. They attempted like 45 plus passes, threw 4 interceptions, lost the game, an easily winnable game. Ohio's pass defense is terrible too. They allowed the most, some of the most air yards. They ranked 125th in EPA per pass, and I still don't want to play Jalen Maiden because I don't trust him. Just don't trust this offense. I don't trust San Diego State, and I mean, we'll probably talk about it a little bit later, but I think this is a good spot to back the Bobcats.
You mentioned Diego Pavia as your start last year against Liberty. Through the air, 16 for 21, 214 yards, passing, 3 touchdowns. That was through the air. On the ground, 20 carries, 125 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Talk about a fantasy day there for Diego Pavia. We're watching for him today against UMass. JJ, who are you starting and sitting today in week 0?
I talked about Audric Estime a little bit earlier, and I think he's going to be a good start today. Although I do think I was a little bit nervous before I was typing this up because Navy's got a pretty good run D, but I kind of believe in – I was looking at the games before I was looking at last year's game when they played. Notre Dame's got like a big O-line, really big O-line. They got Joe Alt at the left tackle, and I think he's going to be making some holes. And like I'm betting on estimate touchdown too. So I think that will provide some fantasy points right there. And then my sit is Kyrie Robinson, the running back for San Jose State. I just don't think he's a good running back. But other than that, the game script's not in his favor. USC, I think USC's defense should come out and play better than they have. And my last thing, I was looking at the depth chart, and last year I remember their linebacker Eric Gentry, and I was thinking if he starts, like, I don't know, I might change my mind because that dude is not a linebacker. He's 6'6" and like 200 pounds, and I don't know how he plays linebacker, but they're starting a true freshman over him, so that was like the nail in the coffin to sit Kyrie Robinson.
All right, JJ, the intern, he is starting Audric Estime, the running back at Notre Dame, and sitting Kyrie Robinson. One thing I want to add about Audric Estime, not a lot going on there. Well, we expect the Notre Dame offense to really revolve around Audric Estime in some respect. Logan Diggs, very good player in their backfield last year. He transfers. He joins Brian Kelly's LSU team, so he's gone. But Audric Estime, along with Sam Hartman, some of the veterans there as far as that Notre Dame skill position group goes. So we expect the big one, probably a first and second down type of back for them to perform well. All right, my start. I mentioned Marshawn Lloyd. He transfers from South Carolina to USC, from the real USC to the new USC. If he's finally healthy, I expect him to play really, really well for SC this year. We've seen Lincoln Riley have success at the running back position. I'm thinking specifically of Kennedy Brooks and Ramondre Stevenson. Could Marshawn Lloyd fill that role for Lincoln Riley this year? And USC 31-point favorites. I think they're going to run all over their opponent this week. I'm starting Marshawn Lloyd. I'm probably starting all of the running backs. I'm probably starting Austin Jones there also. And then there's a freshman. There are two freshmen in Quentin Joyner and Amarian Peterson at USC. Quentin Joyner played really well in the spring game. Kind of reminds you a little bit of Marshawn Lloyd. Can break tackles, is a little bit of a grinder. I like him. So I'm starting Marshawn Lloyd in the USC backfield. I think this is going to be a fun game today. I'm going to sit Cedric Alexander, the freshman at Vanderbilt. Now, we've heard great things about the 5'9", 200-pound player. But in week zero, I'm not really going to start a freshman. So I'm going to sit Cedric Alexander and just kind of wait and see. All right, let's bring up the wide receivers again here. The wide receivers that we are starting for Campus2Canton, our wide receiver rankings for this week. Will Shepard, Smoke Harris, Mekhi Shaw, Cordell David, Jonathan Brady, Mario Williams. Can we see a big day from the USC pair in Mario Williams and Taj Washington? Sam Wigloose is pictured there at Ohio. Michael Pettaway, Chris Mitchell, Jaden McGowan, Dorian Singer, Cyrus Allen. Nicholas Ian Allen, give me one name to pay attention to on this wide receiver list that we expect to perform this week.
Well, I think that, I mentioned Brendan Rice isn't even listed here. I think he's got an opportunity to put together a good day, but it's one of those situations where somebody at USC is going to have a big day each week, and it might rotate a little bit between guys like Williams and Singer and maybe one of the freshmen here or there as well. Sam Wiggles is about as consistent as it gets. At Ohio, we've mentioned him before. One of the things that really caught my eye heading into last year was there were just so many positive things. I definitely try my best to overwhelm myself sometimes with information and read, quotes and everything I can get my hand on. And there were a lot of Ohio State wide receivers who were on record in pieces talking about how Sam Wiggles was just wowing the team in practice, and obviously, really wasn't able to get on the field very much as a walk-on there, but was just impressive day in and day out on the practice field. And so he transfers to Ohio, gets an opportunity to play, and really goes off and is in line for a big season. And I do think today San Diego State defensively might not be exactly what we have gotten used to them being, a top 25 or even top 15, top 10 level defense year in and year out. We might see some evidence today that unit is going to take a little bit of a step back. And I think if so, Wiggles is going to have an opportunity for a big day.
Affectionately nicknamed Wiggles, Sam Wiggloose, affectionately named Wiggles. Chris Moxley, I want to talk to you a little bit about USC's wide receiver core. I think from a CFF draft perspective, we kind of take the strategy from the NFL fantasy, like where there's some ambiguity, you just take the cheapest option. Is that what you have been doing with this wide receiver core between Taj Washington, the speedster from Memphis, who's now at USC, Brennan Rice, Jerry Rice's son, and Mario Williams, who followed Lincoln Riley from Oklahoma to SC? Is that the strategy you've taken, or is there a particular player that you've been targeting?
Early on, I think I was more interested in Dorian Singer, but I've kind of come to the conclusion that I just want the cheapest option because this offense could score 45 plus points every single week. And, I draft a lot of best balls, so I'm not being forced to make that start sit decision usually. But I mean, I'm taking the cheapest guy regardless in a lot of scenarios. So, a lot of times that has been the true freshman, Zachariah Branch. He's gone very late in drafts. I think that he's going to have an impact year one. I've drafted some Brennan Rice. Nick's talked a lot about him already today. Really fun player, interesting player, Jerry Rice's son. And then, Dorian Singer, Mario Williams, Kyron Ware Hudson, like all of these guys will get, will have value. It's just, I expect it to be a lot more of like, maybe like 4 receivers between 600 and 800 yards than one guy who has over 1,000. It could happen, but I don't think so. I don't think there's like an alpha here, like we saw last year with Jordan Addison. I think there's a lot of really good, talented wide receivers, and that's just going to dilute high-end production. But that doesn't make them not worth drafting.
Nick, anytime we see a freshman perform well, that kind of sparks our interest. Jaden McGowan at Vanderbilt played well as a true freshman last year, 5'8", smaller player, but, over 500 yards receiving last year. What are your expectations for him going into his second year? Is he a guy that we could potentially start every other week? What are your expectations for him?
So I certainly was impressed with McGowan early on last year. I agree completely. Whenever we see a true freshman step up, become a full-time starter and contributor early, it's a great thing. But I'm pretty high on Will Sheppard, and I wonder if Sheppard being a clear number one in my eyes, and maybe an all SEC caliber receiver if things go well. I don't know. I just worry a little bit that that's going to eat into McGowan's ultimate upside. I worry, week in, week out, as we get deeper into the year, especially early in the season, though. The non-conference schedule sets up pretty well. Obviously, this week Hawaii, next week Alabama A&M. Wake Forest is not dominant on defense. UNLV. So I think that we have a chance to get maybe the best of McGowan early, but I struggle a little bit to expect him to be incredibly productive once this team gets to SEC play, in part because I think Will Sheppard is going to be somebody they're going to try to force feed a little bit more.
Will Sheppard, Jaden McGowan, 2 players that you need to watch against Hawaii today. Now, we're going to get into a segment here. Corey Piera from Campus2Canton, he's going to give us some players to watch from a Devy perspective. Now, if you haven't played Devy Fantasy Football, essentially you get to draft a taxi squad of college players, between 3 and 5 college players that once they declare for the NFL draft, they are added to your NFL roster. A little bit different from C2C because we're actually starting these guys and getting points on the college side of our Campus to Canton drafts. But we're going to play this segment from Corey. He's going to give us some guys to watch for your Devy leads this year.
What is going on, Campus to Canton family? Corey Prairie here from the Campus to Canton Devy team, and after a long offseason, week 0 is finally here. Now, it may not be the hugest slate of games, especially in terms of Devy, but there's still some excitement to look forward to. Let's go. Like I was saying, week 0, not a lot of Devy relevance right now. This is kind of just a teaser to really the start of the season kind of starting next week. There are 3 Power 5 teams playing this weekend, and we'll take a look at them. They are favored pretty considerably in most of these matchups, so maybe we see some young guys kind of get in at the end of these games. The first of these 3 games is Notre Dame versus Navy, where we're going to be keeping a pretty close eye on new transfer quarterback Sam Hartman coming over from Wake Forest. He's going to be adjusting to a completely different system over here. Now, he was pretty productive over there at Wake Forest. Some might even say prolific. I don't think he's going to be as productive over here, but I think coming over here is going to be better for his draft stock. He's going to get the more eyes and more attention on him over here at Notre Dame. Maybe work himself into a nice day 3 selection in the 2024 NFL draft. Taking a look over at the Notre Dame backfield, I want to take a look at the curious case of Audric Estime. When you take a look at this guy's profile, this should really be somebody that we like, right? Talking about good size, talking about pedigree, Power 5 situation, good star ranking, early production. He's got the market share we want to see, and now he's got the opportunity with Logan Diggs out of town. And when you look at the ADP and you look at his Devy ranking, it doesn't seem to reflect somebody that we're very high on. I think sometimes we can be a bit hard on him, and maybe it's because he's kind of like that old archetype of running back that's not really trending in the NFL anymore, and I'm not innocent of this either. I mean, I've had him pretty low in my rankings. I don't have many shares of him, but that jump he took from year 1 to year 2 was actually pretty good, and now if he takes another favorable jump from year 2 to year 3, we could be looking at somebody who's gaining some sneaky draft buzz, especially the attention he might get over there at Notre Dame. Also in this backfield, I just wanted to give a quick mention to Jadarian Price, a guy who was a true freshman last year, had a lot of buzz during the spring, ended up tearing his Achilles before we even got to see him be on the field. It sounds like he's returning to full health. He's got a pretty good shot to be the number 2 running back now, with Chris Tyree moving on to wide receiver full-time, and like the aforementioned Logan Diggs moving on to LSU. Speaking of Tyree, it'll be interesting to see how his transition to a full-time wide receiver goes for him. He's operating out of the slot, and camp reports have been a little bit mixed, but he did earn a starting spot on the depth chart as of right now. He's a little bit of a smaller guy. He's got that 4.3 speed, so you know he's got that, but his skill set is a little bit limited. This might open the door for some more playing time for a true freshman that we are all very excited about in wide receiver Jaden Greathouse. After a strong high school career and a pretty strong showing in the spring, Jaden Greathouse is working himself into contention to be a pretty strong contributor in year 1. He had a 10-catch, 100-plus yard performance in the spring game that really gave us some shades of the way Michael Mayer was used in this offense. Athleticism concerns are the biggest red flag in Jaden Greathouse's profile, but right now he's locked in as a top 10 freshman wide receiver in this incoming class for me. Heading over to the second of 3 Power 5 teams playing this week, and that's USC versus San Jose State. Now, there probably isn't much I really need to say about quarterback Caleb Williams. I think a lot is going to have to go wrong for him not to be in contention for the first overall pick in next year's NFL draft. If I had to nitpick one thing I kind of want to see him improve on, it's maybe how he deals with pressure, maybe getting the ball out of his hands a little bit quicker. You know, despite having the highest average time to throw in the conference, his 30 sacks tripled the amount of sacks that Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix got combined. We saw it really come to the forefront against Utah last year when he took 7 sacks because of that hamstring injury that pretty much took away his legs in that game, just holding onto the ball a little bit too long. Nitpicking aside, though, I fully expect him to be a Heisman contender, and it's a very legitimate outcome that he's going to be the first overall pick in next year's draft. Now, this USC wide receiver core is probably the most interesting group of players on this team to most fantasy managers out there. You know, how does the pecking order break down? Who's going to lead this room? How much playing time does the freshman get? Like, I don't think we're going to get those answers here in week 0, but we might at least get a little bit of a preview on who are the guys to be relied on throughout the season. Now, we've been pretty vocal on the Back to Devy podcast, and frankly, the entire network has been pretty vocal about how we kind of think Dorian Singer is a little bit overrated. But on the flip side of that, we've also been pretty surprised supportive of Brendan Rice, a guy with a lot of interesting NFL traits, enough traits to make the freak list of this year by Dane Brugler of The Athletic. So kind of an interesting guy to watch going into this year, maybe a candidate to throw on the watch list going into next year's NFL draft. I also wouldn't read too much into Zachariah Branch's placement on the depth chart being on the third team right now. I mean, if you read any of the spring reports, you've read any of the fall camp news, I mean, it's clear they're going to use him in a bunch of versatile ways and get him on the field in a bunch of different ways. I'm not worried about his involvement this season. Also keeping an eye on this Trojan backfield where ex-Gamecocks running back Marshawn Lloyd has transferred over, a borderline 5-star prospect back in the 2020 class. He unfortunately has his career derailed by an early ACL, never really returns to the prospect that we kind of fell in love with. He got the dreaded OR tag with Austin Jones right now, sharing the starting duties right now. Austin Jones kind of lacks a little bit of explosiveness. If Marshawn Lloyd can return to form, not something I'm entirely sure he can do, he can kind of add a bit of dynamic element to this backfield that is maybe missing right now. True freshman running back Quentin Joyner also made the depth chart as the running back 4 right now after that really strong spring and fall that he's had that really strong spring game where he took the 2 touchdowns on a couple of long plays there. He's entering the season as a top 30 Devy running back for me. He's my RB7 in this upcoming class. I really think he has a strong chance to be the starter heading into the 2024 season. We'll have one last matchup with a Power 5 team in it, and that's Vanderbilt going up against Hawaii. Now, I'd be lying if I said there was a lot of Devy talent in this game for us to look forward to, but wide receiver Will Shepherd is kind of an interesting guy. I think he's going to be playing on Sundays. I think he's probably maxes out as a day 3 pick, but Cedric Alexander, a true freshman running back over there at Vanderbilt as well, has been getting a lot of buzz as a guy that some beat reporters think could lead the team in rushing this year. So when we're looking for those freshmen and we're looking for that early production, he's maybe a guy that we should be throwing on our radar. That about wraps up the Devy Sesh for this week. Make sure you guys are coming back every Saturday morning to hear what we're looking out for every week of the season. And make sure you guys are listening to Back to Devy, the #1 Devy podcast on the Campus2Canton network. Don't let anybody tell you different. And make sure you guys are checking out campus2canton.com. We got loads of stuff over there. We'll be keeping you up to date on everything Devy all season long.
It's college football game day, and we're getting you ready for all the action on campus to Canton.
So let's get into some best ball philosophy here.
Yeah.
In your experience, going back many, many, many years, drafting in national tournaments, Bradley, have you historically been shying away from the running back position in favor of wide receivers? In favor of, if you're drafting in the FFPC, tight end premium format, in favor of tight ends as well. Is that the smart play when you're drafting this early in the drafting season?
Yeah, so taking value is going to be huge, and looking at like running backs and wide receivers, like you want to take a look at how the structure is. So you mentioned earlier the FFPC has a couple different types, like they've got super flex and 1 quarterback, so that's going to change your strategy a little bit. If you have only 2 wide receivers or if you're drafting 3 wide receivers. And of course, the PPR is a different aspect compared to other formats or other tournaments. And so keeping in mind the pass catching upside of some of the running backs may be more valuable in those formats. So the Austin Ecklers, the Christian McCaffreys may be more value because they get more receptions, and so like I loved taking late shots a couple years ago on like the JD McKissicks of the world who would get 50 receptions really cheaply. So that's something to consider. But when it comes to like overall value, like you're in the middle of a draft and you just noticed that, I don't know, maybe it's Chris Godwin has fallen 14 spots, but Chris Godwin was not in your plans to be drafting. Like maybe you don't have a strong player take on Chris Godwin, or my take is that I don't think the Bucs are going to be particularly good this year. But for him to be dropping, let's say 14 spots is more than a full round. And based on the data that we've seen, if you get to draft a player more than 12 spots ahead or behind ADP, so they drop 12 or more spots, you have an 84% edge over the rest of the tournament players who are drafting this player. Because typically this player isn't going to drop. The average draft position is a really strong indicator of where a player is going to go. And I think that is also on the flip side. If you are reaching too much, you're giving up value in your drafts. And so when it comes to value-based drafting, you need to consider, just because this guy is in my plans or I don't have a strong player take on him, maybe that's your opportunity to sprinkle in some shares of this player at a good price.
You can use promo code C2C for a 100% deposit match on Prize Picks. If you're playing player props today, go ahead and drop that C2C promo code, 100% deposit match. Go ahead and do that. Support Campus to Canton and what we are doing. You can call into the show. Will Chudy has dropped the link to call into the show. Give us your takes on the 2023 season on week 0. You can call into the show and join us. Make sure you like the video. We should get this stuff, I don't know, 1 million, a million likes. I think that would be reasonable. And let's break the internet here with this video. Subscribe to the channel. Let's bring up the running back position here to look at our running back rankings for week 0. I know that Saban Gura is on that list. Everybody seems to love Audric Estime, and Marshawn Lloyd is there. We do need to note that Marquise Crosby is out this week. Nick or Chris, do we have expectations on who's going to fill his spot in the backfield?
Yeah, it's likely to be Charvis Thornton, who's a senior, showed some good things last year, played more than a quarter of Louisiana Tech snaps. Tyree Shelton had been ahead of him on the depth chart, but he's questionable as well. Sounds like a game time decision on the transfer from Miami of Ohio. So I would expect that Thornton is going to get most of the workload in Crosby's place.
Cedric Alexander, the freshman, he's listed as 3rd on the depth chart, but we've heard really great things about him. Chris Moxley, Keenan Christian, the speedster from USC, now transfers to San Diego State. Maybe this is the year that we finally get to see that big playability on the field in a full-time role.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his, actually. Guy that I've been drafting a lot this offseason just because I think that he's super explosive. I mean, he's like 180 pounds, so I don't think he'll see 20-plus carries a game, but I think he doesn't need to. Generally speaking, the Mountain West has smaller defensive lines. There are some really good defenses in the Mountain West, but for the most part, it's not really a concern of mine. So I like him for the whole year. I like him in this matchup too. Ohio's defense does not scare me really at all. I expect some explosive plays from him. Really fast. I mean, I think was the fastest player on the team this offseason. So exciting kid. I really, really like what he could do this year.
Really exciting player who played well as a freshman, is now at San Diego or at USC, now a running back at San Diego State. Let's watch out for him. Let's make some people some money here, folks. You can play Prize Picks, promo code C2C for a 100% deposit match. I think that's up to $100 or $200. So you can put in your $100. All right. We know if Austin was here, he plays in the, he probably plays $50,000 per prop. So but we're not playing with that big money out here. The line on Jaden McGowan, the freshman, is over under 37.5 receiving yards. I'm going to take the over on that against Hawaii today. I think both Jaden McGowan and Will Shepherd should have good days. Give me over on 37.5. And Saban Gura, who is a focal point of Ohio's offense, I like his receiving line, 12.5 receiving yards. That's one catch. One screen pass that goes for 15 yards, and we hit the over there. So give me Jaden McGowan over on 37.5 on his player prop. Saban Gura over 12.5 receiving yards. I like both of those lines today. Chris, what do you like on Prize Picks today?
Yeah, I really like both of those as well. Saban Gura, that 12.5 is he hit that in 8 games last year. I mean, he's pretty involved in the passing game. I'm surprised that it was that low. It's actually higher on books, so you're getting a little bit of value there. I'm going to stick with Saban Gura, actually, and I think he's also live for the over 12.5 fantasy points. Again, we're talking about how he's just so involved in this offense in both phases of the game. I think he can score a touchdown, get 60 yards, and he pretty much gets you there. Maybe a catch or two, and you're sitting pretty. I think that he has a lot of value. I think Caleb Williams over 3.5 pass plus rush touchdowns. It's a really interesting number. I think he can get. I mean, obviously, I think he can rush if he wants to, but I mean, he could have 4 passing touchdowns in like the first half. So I think there is value there. We compare it to what's available on like DraftKings. It's like minus 125. So you're getting this a pick 'em. And then Curtis Rourke over 1.5 touchdowns. I mean, this is like a Curtis Rourke Love Fest show. I mean, we all think I really like Curtis Rourke. I think this line is discounted because he tore his ACL in November last year, but he's healthy. He's been healthy. He's going to play. It would not surprise me if he had 3 touchdowns today. I think 1.5 is a little bit too low. I think the line should be 2. And again, I like comparing it to what's available on different books. It's minus 120 on DraftKings. So you're getting value here again on all 3 of these props. So Sabingura over 12.5 fantasy points, Caleb Williams over 3.5 pass plus rush touchdowns, and Curtis Rourke over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I mean, I've already submitted a slip with that on Prize Picks. I already used my promo code C2C, but still submitted my slip on those 3 specifically. And Felix again.
One of these days, I will become a professional at this. I will get better. I promise. It won't be next week or the week after, but one of these days. Let us know what prize picks, what player props you are playing in the chat. Join us at Better Sports on YouTube. Join us at Campus2Canton on YouTube. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I want to know what player props you are playing. JJ, I want to know what player props you are playing. You got the young perspective, so we need some young eyes, some fresh eyes looking at us at this. What player props are you playing today?
I've also got Bangura's. I got his over touchdown, so we're kind of doing the triple crown here right now with 3.
We love Say Bangura today.
Yeah. And then I've got Will Shepherd's over. It's 14.5, and I saw that he's 3 for 3 against G5 teams, and last year he was 7 for 13, so you got pretty good odds over there. And then my last one is Star Thomas over 41.5 yards. That one I'm a little more iffy on, but I'm banking on UMass being bad, and they're a bad run defense, so that's mostly it. And Diego Pavia, I think last year he had like 30% of all the rushing yards. So if not Star Thomas, Pavia over rushing yards.
Nicholas Ian Allen, give us the player props that you are recommending today.
Yeah, I have to second the Pavia over 33.5 rushing yards. Our projection is closer to 50. So I feel pretty good about that. There are a couple of Hawaii overs that I like. One has moved a little bit since we first noted it in our Discord when the projections were released earlier this week. Braden Shager's now up to 220.5 passing yards. Still think that there is a little bit of value there. Our projection is 250. And so, that might be ambitious, but still definitely some room there that I do think that Traeger, and especially with Hawaii transitioning to the run and shoot, going all in on that this year, I think that we're going to see a significant uptick in pass attempts, percentage wise and things like that. So I think there's definitely an opportunity there. Vanderbilt's also a little bit banged up on the defensive side of the ball, so I like that. I think there's also some value at wide receiver, Jonah Pinoque. There's been a lot of worry, trying to figure out who is going to be the beneficiary of the Hawaii offense and the run and shoot, and who's in what position, because the slot has traditionally been pretty productive. But I think Pinoque, regardless of what actually where he lines up, is the clear wide receiver number 1. Stephen McBride might be my second favorite right now, but I think Pinoque is going to have an opportunity to go over 37.5 relatively easily. I think he's going to be targeted most in this offense moving forward, and probably getting a little bit of discount right now based on some of the uncertainty there. And 2 unders I like for Caleb Williams, actually. Under 305.5 passing yards. It's just a big number, and it's week 1. I feel like the potential to sort of let Austin Jones and Marshawn Lloyd carry a relatively heavy workload, get Caleb Williams, in and out somewhat quickly. I'm just not sure he's going to be in there long enough to get to 305, especially if they do try to run the football a bit, get that established, I guess. And then the under 28.5 rushing yards, I think might be my favorite of the day, because I think there is zero chance we see a single designed run for Caleb Williams today. So yeah, he could scramble, break off a 30-yard run. Yeah, he's probably not going to lose too many yards on sacks, but I just think that they're going to be very careful, not going to call for him to run the football at any point. So our projection's under the 28.5 as well, and I think I agree.
I'm thinking. Listen. I'm going to get it. I promise. I actually don't promise. I take that back. Use promo code C2C for a 100% deposit match. All right. Well, let's bring up the tight end graphic as we get people ready to set their lineups for week 0 if you're playing this week. Chris Moxley, I see Josiah Miamin transfer from Iowa to FIU there pictured. He's number 1. I'm still learning the tight end landscape as far as CFF goes. I know Mark Redmond because he was at Washington before he transferred. But the rest of these names, until I learn them, they're made-up names. They're fake names, Chris Moxley. So who do you like on the list today?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really not tight end is already really tough in college fantasy. Add that these teams are teams that generally don't utilize the tight end. I actually kind of like Sean Brown, though. He's coming from Jacksonville State. He's pretty involved in this offense. Generally speaking, I think that he could play a fairly large role in the passing game. He was an all-conference player last year. I think he could be, a guy that gets 30 to 40 yards per game and maybe a touchdown here and there, which, if you're playing college fantasy, that's not that bad of an outcome for your tight end. It's a really, really shallow position. So Sean Brown, he's a good blocker too, 6'5", 250. He'll be on for the majority of snaps. So at least you're getting that exposure. And we've talked about the San Jose State duo a bunch, Mazzotti and Sam Olson. I think both could have big days because we were talking about Lockhart earlier, how Lockhart he might not play. 2, if he does play, he's probably not 100%. So I expect them to rely on the tight end a little bit, and I think that you could get some value there. I think tight end, not a lot of leagues are kicking off this week. A lot start next week, but in DFS, I think tight end is pretty interesting to find a little bit of value and at very low exposure. So a guy like Sean Brown or one of the San Jose State guys could be a nice piece where you can 3x or 4x relatively easily.
There we go. I think we've covered wide receiver, running back, tight end. We've covered all of the positions. We will cover each position for you every single week according to our projections at Campus2Canton.com. Nick, I want to get to some of your best picks on the week is from a betting perspective. We're going to do this segment every single week so you guys can get your tickets in. We might even move it a little bit earlier in the show so people can get, around 10:30, make sure they get in their tickets before the noon game starts. But give us your best picks for the week.
So looking at our projections, how they compare to the odds makers, and when we release our official projections that we grade against the spread all year, that happens on Tuesday evening. So there's definitely some time to see things move a little bit. But Ohio, I think, is the team that I like the most. I've seen a lot of smart folks out there who are on Ohio to go, to San Diego State, maybe win the game outright. Our official projection was +3. It is now down to 2.5. It looks like just about everywhere. There might be a +3, one or two spots maybe.
I can get you a +3 on DraftKings right now at -118.
There you go. On that game, I also do like the Ohio San Diego State over 49.5. That was our official projection. I'm not sure if that has moved this morning, but
get your 49, man.
Oh, there you go.
Finding value.
So I think that the over, our projection doesn't show a strong or a big projected edge there. Part of that is both of the teams come in with a projected pace in the triple digits, well into the triple digits. But I think that's a little bit misleading for San Diego State specifically, because they do have now Ryan Lindley calling the plays, a little bit different. He, in his background, worked for Mike Leach at Mississippi State at the beginning of last year. Also was at Utah, not the fastest paced team, but I do think we're going to see an uptick there. And Ohio, just as we've talked about, we really, really like the skill position players that they've got together. A lot of experience, a lot of, they work well together already. That San Diego State team we mentioned defensively might not be quite as good as they have in the years past. So I do like the over in that game. And then last one, actually we've got a team favored who is currently an underdog by the odds makers, and that's Jacksonville State in their first FBS game. We've got the Gamecocks as about a 2-point favorite, and they are currently, looks like consensus line, -1.5 UTEP favored. There's maybe even a little bit more movement. I see some UTEP -1 as well. So we have Jacksonville State favored to win that game outright at home in their Conference USA debut.
Rich Rodriguez back in FBS. He's a fun coach to have at this level. All right, boys. We're ready to close out the show and make some game selections. Let's start with Navy versus Notre Dame. They're in Dublin. Notre Dame favored by 20.5. These all are coming from DraftKings. I think Notre Dame covers today. Chris Moxley, I've got Notre Dame.
I have Notre Dame as well. I project this game to be about 22 points. It's hovering around 20.5 and 21, but I'm going to also tell you that I'm taking the over in this game. Over 49, I think, is the best number you can get it at.
Jivon, Notre Dame favored by 20.5. They're in Dublin today, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. That's our start. Who do you got, Jivon?
I got Notre Dame as well. I don't think Navy can keep up with them, to be honest.
Nick, I've listened to the CFB Winning Edge podcast enough to know that you guys are not really high on Navy this year, so you have to expect that Notre Dame is going to cover the 20.5, 21 today.
Yeah, the way we calculate things, Navy just doesn't stack up very well from a talent perspective, so we're probably underrating Navy a bit. But all three of our projection models, including the one that only looks at stats, which gives Navy the best chance, still has Notre Dame covering.
Hawaii at Vanderbilt, 7.
Wait. We got to get a guest pick here. We got a guest pick.
All right.
Okay. Navy under a 0.5 point. First quarter is the pick of the day.
All right, Will. Guest pick from Will under 0.5 point. Under half
first
a point.
Quarter.
I like that one.
Jesus.
Hawaii at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt favored by 17.5, 7:30 Eastern time. I am taking Vanderbilt to cover here. Chris Moxley, who do you got?
I got the Bows, man. I'm back in the Bows. I've actually seen Hawaii money come in this morning, which has been pretty interesting. It was at 17.5. It's now at 17 at Circa, which tells me that there's some people back in Hawaii here with some money. So I like the Bows. I think they're going to rebound. I think this would be better offense. Nick talked about how they're actually implementing the run and shoot this year. They weren't really able to last year. They covered 6 of their last 7 games. I like the Bows, and if you could find a 55 or a 54.5, I also like the over in this game.
Jivon, you got to break the tie here. I'm going with Vanderbilt. Chris has got Hawaii to cover. Who do you got, JJ?
I got Vandy too. I also like the over, but the spread of 17, it's a big spread, but I got Vandy in this one.
All right, Nick, close us out. Vanderbilt by 17.5. Who do you got?
I'm going to have to tie it up again. So
Yeah,
on
go
UH
Bows.
to cover. This is not the same team that lost 63-10 against Vandy in week 0 last year. They were much more competitive toward the end of the season. They do have, an established quarterback in Braden Shager. I think the offense will be a little bit better. Not expecting them to go in there and win, but all of our projection models have Hawaii covering.
All right,
I got this.
Split.
I got this game at 12.7. By the way, like I'm way off. I'm super high on Hawaii, so that scares the crap out of me. But I'm simpatico with me. So. There we go.
San Jose State at USC, 8 p.m. Eastern time. USC favored by 30.5. I think USC covers here, even with their second and third teams. Hey, do I get to see Malachi Nelson today? Do I get to see Deuce Robinson? I want to see them. I think that that USC will get out far enough that we get to see those guys today. Chris Moxley, who do you got?
I got USC covering the full 30.5. If San Jose State had Justin Lockhart 100%, I think I might lean San Jose State. But I do have the over on San Jose State's team total 16.5. I think they get that in the second half with the backups, who we know USC's defense struggled last year, and I don't think they're any better from a depth perspective, even if their starters are better. So USC covers, but I like the team total over for San Jose State.
JJ, 30.5. Are you taking USC or San Jose State in this one?
Yeah, I got 30. I got USC covering the spread as well. Like I said, no more Eric Gentry. That might be my scapegoat out of everything right now. And then also Zach Branch. If they let him on the field, then if he plays, he's gonna go off. So
Nick?
So this one, I disagree a little bit with the numbers. I do lean on the numbers. I like to try to get out of the way. None of our 3 projection models could get to 30.5. Our final score prediction is 45-16, and that seems about 10 points too few for USC. I think they break 50, get maybe 55-16. Seems like a little bit more likely outcome to me personally than what the numbers say right now.
Nick, we got about 2 minutes left here before we close out the show. Are there any players or storylines that you are interested in here in week 0 that we didn't get to cover, that you might find our audience interesting, that might find it interesting specifically for, folks who are new to the college football game or just getting introduced? Week 0 is a little bit of a teaser. Any storylines or numbers or player props or anything like that you would recommend for a new college football fan to pay attention to today here in week 0?
Well, so if you are, in the later games, maybe you're going to watch FIU and Louisiana Tech, and might be the only time this year you see them or pay this close attention to. Keep an eye out for Shamari Lawrence, the running back. Is a transfer from the FCS level at FIU. Louisiana Tech has maybe the lightest defensive line in the country. They were not good last year, and they really haven't improved in any way that I can see. Influx of transfers and things like that. So I think there's an opportunity for FIU and Shamari Lawrence specifically to run the football tonight, and could be a good game for them.
Chris, I like to think that we're always introducing a new audience, a newer audience, a different way to watch college football for the first time, from the fantasy perspective, from the player props perspective. Anything that we haven't covered already that you would say, hey, new college football fan, I want you to watch this particular thing today?
Check out the Conference USA matchup of UTEP and Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State's a really fun team with Rich Rod under center or coaching, and I think UTEP is an improving program under Dana Dimel.
there you have it. We're going to be here every single week to get you ready for the games. So enjoy your Saturday. 2:30 starting this week. We'll be back next week. Peace, everybody.
It's good. It's good. The job is done. We can go home now.